But let's start with one question: Is how did you get into wrestling? I love to ask this question because everyone has a different journey. Was it a friend, a family member, channel surfing, possibly?
No, I mean, well, a little bit of everything. I used to be into pro wrestling when I was in, well, most of lucha libre when I was a kid. And I mean, I'm Mexican, so definitely it's part of my culture. Especially in Mexico, lucha libre is huge. And that's what I grew up watching. And then when I came over to the U.S., it was a little different because it wasn't, we didn't have TV, I guess per se, until we got older, and then eventually I kind of slowly got into American style pro wrestling. You know, back then with like The Rock and Stone Cold and Triple H and those guys, Undertaker, Chris Jericho, Jeff Hardy, all those guys. That's kind of how I got into American wrestling, but that wasn't until much later, until after I got out of high school. Um, but no, I for me it was always lucha libre growing up when I was a child, and that to me is still what fascinates me and what I really still enjoy. But yeah, essentially that's kind of how it happened. I had a friend who back then had this thing called the black box. For some of you guys that still remember what that
Yeah,
is,
of course.
um, so we used to head over to his house and we used to watch the WWE pay per views because he was able to. We were able to that way. If you don't know what the black box is, just look it up.
It's
Uh,
pirating. It's pirating, folks. That's what it
essentially,
is. That's what it is. It's when people find the
I don't want to incriminate myself.
it's when people find the stream online to watch current wrestling and you don't want to pay for it. You can do that with your computer. But back in the day, you had to have no guy who worked at the cable company to hook something into your cable box that would give you all the channels.
All the channels.
All the channels, even the
So
dirty ones, folks.
even the dirty ones. So that's kind of how eventually I got into it. It was actually WrestleMania 17.
Wow.
It was the TLC match
Yeah.
that we were watching. It was the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. And there was this one spot in particular where Jeff Hardy was hanging from the titles,
Yeah.
and then Edge speared him. And then that was the moment that I was like, "Oh man, this is awesome! I want to try this. I want to do this."
Wow.
And then we did. You know, I went down the whole backyard wrestling circuit or thing, much like a whole lot of other folks did.
Hmm.
And then eventually, I just went in and I got trained. I met these guys who did backyard wrestling, and then we had a ring. We had a boxing ring. We had our monthly shows. We used to go down to PWG and we used to flyer for our shows at PWG.
Yet, when you made your debut, your main roster debut in the WWE, obviously you were determined to be a professional wrestler. But yet, when you showed up, on at least on the main card on Raw and
Mhm.
SmackDown, whatever, you were a special personal ring announcer for Alberto Del Rio. Now, obviously, that's how people probably they know you from. But yet, was that disappointing to you? Because obviously you want to
What?
be a wrestler, I'm assuming, versus ring announcer. Both great spots, but yet I'm assuming when you saw Edge hit Jeff Hardy with that spear, you weren't like, I can't wait to announce someone to the ring.
Right. No, that's definitely not what I had in mind. However, my story is very different than everybody else's. I did a wrestling tryout at the Staples Center on August. It was the day after SummerSlam 2010.
Okay.
So whatever day that was, it was a Raw, and then we got there like around maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. We did a full on like wrestling tryout for a couple hours, and they pulled me aside. The guy's name at the time was Ty Bailey. He was the main um, talent agent scout kind of a guy. But either way, back then it was Ty Bailey. And then he approached me afterwards, and he basically gave me the rundown, a bunch of questions asking if I was under contract, if I'd be willing to move to Florida, if given the opportunity. To which eventually that's kind of how it went down. So I started um, because I went into catering that later that day, that Raw, and I was approached later on, and I was asked if I wanted to do ring announcing the following day on SmackDown. I didn't know for what. They just asked me if I was available the next day in Bakersfield, California. To which obviously I said yes. They had asked me if I've ever done ring announcing before, which I never have, but I said yes. They asked me if I had a tuxedo, which I said yes, which I didn't. So I went to the Goodwill that was near my house, and I bought a cheap little suit. And there was a bridal
Wow.
store across the street from that Goodwill, and then I bought some bow ties. So then I went the next day to Bakersfield, which is just maybe like 2 hours north of Los Angeles, And I did my whole spiel. I did the tryout. They asked me again for the second day in Fresno because they were doing a double taping of SmackDown because the SmackDown guys were going overseas the next week,
Okay.
so they wanted to do a double taping. Um, and then after the second day of SmackDown, they basically offered me a contract, and it was just right from there. That's how it kind of went down. I didn't do developmental first. I just started on the main roster. Um, and then once I officially got my officially after my medical stuff and all that other stuff, which took like 2-3 months. Once I finally got my official contract, I got sent over to Tampa for FCW, and then I started wrestling over there. But at the same time, I was still doing main roster stuff. So I started different than everybody else, and I feel like I got a lot of heat from a lot of guys in developmental because I just came in. I was never there for training, and I was already on the main roster. So it was a little different. So I'm sure I
Yeah.
got a lot of comments that were made here and there.
None to your face, though.
No, of course not.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's a problem with a lot of businesses in general. Obviously, wrestling, I think, is a specialty to it because they'll bring in, like, say, a football player, and a
Mhm.
football player didn't go on the indies, didn't go to high schools and wrestle in front of 25 people for a hot dog and a handshake. Like
Right.
they were brought in because, oh, you were an athlete in the NFL, so we want to try to take your athleticism and turn it into becoming a professional wrestler, and maybe it'll pan out. And obviously that has happened to a lot of people. Baron Corbin, and Pat McAfee is doing great for
Mhm.
himself. Goldberg, like it's shown that people have done this, and obviously with you and in bringing you up to be a wrestler, and then on the main roster as well, it's this jealousy, obviously.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. But
You know,
it wasn't until I got to WWE that I understood that whole process because I used to be like that. I did 4 years on independence before I had my tryout. Um, and I felt the same way. I was like, why are they getting all these models? Why are they getting all these football guys?
mhm.
Why not go and get wrestlers? And it wasn't until I got to there that I understood the reason why. Because it's hard to teach somebody the discipline to work out, to eat right, to if you're already dedicated in a sport, you already have that discipline.
Yep.
Now we just have to teach you wrestling, which is a whole lot easier than teach a wrestler how to be disciplined and eating right and working out and having that mentality. That's a whole lot harder.
Mm.
And I'm definitely guilty of that. Um, so and then also when you come in from the independent, sometimes you already come with a mindset. Your brain is already wired a certain way.
Right.
But if you already come in shape, looking great, and then we just teach you our way, we can mold you how to our desires. So I totally get the whole idea of picking these athletes and then just making them wrestlers. I get that. The one thing that does lack though on that end is the love for the profession.
Yes.
That is where the independent wrestlers have the advantage over the non-wrestling athletes.
Hmm.
They understand it, they love it, they have an appreciation for it. Whereas a lot of these other guys, they probably never will, or they'll never get it. They may be great, they may take great bumps, they'll go through the cycle of it, but they'll never have that appreciation for it.
Hmm.
And that's where the balance of which is better. They both have their pros and cons.
Yeah, and obviously with the information on social media and the internet, fans can find out your backstory, where you
Oh yeah.
came from instantly versus, the perfect example is I didn't know The Undertaker was Mean
Mhm.
Mark,
Right,
Callis in
right.
WCW. Had no idea because I didn't watch WCW. And I didn't have Google in 1990 to look this information up. So the appreciation even comes through fans, obviously, because if they see someone who they know, oh, I knew you wrestled in high schools. I knew you went across the world in
Mhm.
Mexico and Japan and traveled all around the world and you finally got to the WWE versus,
Right.
oh, you were good at football? Okay, we'll teach you how to wrestle. And then fans know that and they like the heat of anger towards someone who cut in line, I guess would be the description.
Mhm.
And obviously, each person has a different story. I didn't go across the world and bump and suffer for tuna can, enough money to buy a tuna can and eat it for dinner. But
Right, right.
some people have, some people haven't. So I guess we'll have to see. But again, your main roster though, were you happy. And this is his story, not mine. His story was they asked Del Rio, hey, do you want this guy as your ring announcer? And he said, yes, of course. So is that true? Were you told like, hey, if he likes you, you get this, or you got this no matter what?
No. I think it was a mixture of a whole lot of different things. Obviously, he had to be comfortable with it as well, and ultimately, it came down to Vince.
Right.
It just happened to work out. It just happened to work out. Vince loved it, and Vince put the strap on the rocket on both of us, like from the get go. Because from the beginning, we were main event. Well, our first feud was Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
It's not already in itself.
Right.
That in itself. So that in itself is awesome. And then we were main eventers on SmackDown from the beginning. So definitely we needed to have Vince's blessing in order for that to happen, in order for that to be carried on into the multiple months and years of being on that position. And obviously we had to put in our side of it too. We had to put our effort and our work, and I think our work and our work ethic was strong to where we were able to maintain that position for so long.
It's true.
But no, I mean, it was hurtful at first when I started because I was a wrestler. That's what I knew. I wanted to wrestle. I got to see everybody else play, and I wasn't playing. I was like, what the? But as time went on, I kind of came to terms with it. I had to accept it. But once I had to accept it, I had to understand the reasons why I was going to accept it and be happy with it. Mm-hmm. I'm still, of course I want to wrestle. Of course I want to wrestle. But I'm not getting hurt. My workload is a whole lot easier. I get paid just to come in and basically chit-chat and talk for like 10 seconds.
And not a bad gig, right?
Yeah, not a bad gig. I'll take I'll get beat up here and there, but for the most part, I mean, because really, if you think about it, like the whole intro itself is maybe 15, 20 seconds total. I'm on camera maybe half of that because they're panning on between myself and Alberto throughout the whole intro, and then a couple of seconds here and there throughout the match. So I was like, that's not too shabby. But as time went on, I mean, I was getting myself in the ring before Raw and SmackDown. And then the producer saw it, the other wrestler saw it. I mean, there was always a camera that was watching. So Vince was watching it. And then little by little, they started putting me in the ring. Or they were trusting me more with bigger spots, bigger situations, where they knew I was going to be there. Because that's very important, especially when it's TV, when it's live TV. If they put me, they're like, all right, at this point in time, at this exact point in time, you have to be here for XYZ, whatever. I had to make sure that I was there, regardless of whatever had happened prior. So I had to know my spots. So they trusted me with that, which is great. And then that was a whole other thing that led into so many other things where they trusted me to be in certain situations, and they didn't have to worry that I was like, was I going to hurt this guy? Can I catch this guy? Can I make him look good? So there's so many different aspects that go into it. Yeah. But ultimately, what it came down to was that they trusted me. And that's a very good position to be in.
True. Obviously in wrestling, I think it's a 100% a trust business. Like if I'm going to pick you up and you're 500 pounds or whatever, and I'm going to drop you, you better drop me the right way because I could be hurt and then I can't feed my family and feed my kids because you're not a professional. And so I can't trust you. And obviously it has been proven that the best matches usually involve trust. But you did break my trust once. When you ran down Santa Claus on Christmas. Excuse me, sir. I'm speaking. You were involved. You didn't run the car. Weren't driving the car. You weren't driving the car. You're an accomplice. You were there for the situation of December 24th at 8:00 at night. By the way, this is Christmas Eve, folks. Okay, so you and Alberto Del Rio have now injured Santa Claus. Now, I asked him the question, but I need to ask you the question as well. Did you ever receive hate mail because on Christmas Eve you just you injured Santa Claus, and for 3 hours we're underneath the idea that Santa Claus is not going to live and he's not going to be able to deliver presents. So we're rolling into like 11:00 at night. Christmas is in about an hour. And technically, if you use time zones, Santa should be flying in the sky, dropping off presents. But you and Del Rio almost stole that from us. So, how much hate mail did you receive?
My Twitter was blowing up like crazy that day. I remember that. So that was great. And also,
Oh, it was
I mean,
great when
I
you
wasn't
ran over
well, hold
when
on.
you hurt Santa. That's
Well,
what it was
yes,
great.
yes, because I am not a fan of Christmas anyways. So
Oh,
I'm very Halloween. You're either one or two. You're a Halloween or
wow,
a Christmas guy. I'm a Halloween guy, 100%,
wow,
100%.
wow.
So yeah, Halloween all the way.
Now,
Um,
I will admit, I live in Boston, so it's easier to decorate for Halloween because it's not 5 degrees outside when I'm trying to hang Christmas lights on my house versus putting a skeleton up when it's still like 60. So I agree with you a little bit on that. But
yeah,
so, so
I was
now
never.
you're actually giving me evidence that you did it on purpose.
And it wasn't well. Technically, that was Alberto. I ran over Big Show.
True.
I just had
Oh,
we
so
just
you just ran over somebody else?
yeah,
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
no, but hey, you know what? Like that day, I did cry. I did cry a little bit. We had to deal with Cena afterwards, and yeah, that was fun.
That's one of my top
That
five
was
favorite memories of WWE. Honestly, like there's like you have great moments of seeing Steve Austin and The Rock
mm,
and Mick Foley up the Hell in the Cell, but top five Raw moments still to this day. I don't even care. I'm not. If I wasn't even interviewing you and someone asked me, "Hey, what's your top five minutes?" I'm like, the time Del Rio and Ricardo almost killed Santa Claus on
Kilo
Christmas
Santa.
Eve. That caused a rift in time that made people angry and suffering. But seriously, like
But
I
what
wonder
was
how that
nice?
came off. I remember watching it and I was like, this is great, but like I'm thinking about time. Like I'm a little kid watching this and thinking like, if a little kid's watching this, are they like losing their
Oh,
crap right now?
I hope so. I hope so. Although what was really cool about that night, though, I remember both Alberto and Cena had so much to do that day. So it was one of those matches where Cena comes up to me. Cena and Malenko, man, Malenko was our producer. They go, hey, think of some stuff. So a lot of the spots that happened in the match were my spots, which was always great, and they trusted me with it. They once I gave them the spots, they arranged them and they put them in the way that would make sense. But like most of them, and then they tweaked them, but they were my spots, and then that to me was awesome. And granted, a lot of times it was me getting the end result of it, but that was so much fun. I had such a blast that day, and then watching it back was awesome. Um,
I love that. I love that. I'm a sucker for anything holiday special, and then I'm
mhm.
watching it and I'm seeing this happen. I'm like, God damn, I love this so much. The fact that someone's like, hey, how about we run over Santa Claus? I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And then throughout the night, we'll think he's dead. Ah, sir? Like,
Well, you know, one of my favorite parts about that night was that Cena promo, where
oh yeah,
I think Booker T comes out of like the doctor's office, and
yes.
then he tells everybody that like, Santa's not gonna make it, and then we come up, and then Cena comes up, and then he goes for Santa.
Oh no, 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 no. He had his fist
Oh
up. He's
yeah,
like,
he was.
for Santa, and everyone's like, Booker T's in
What,
his face, like,
um, what did he say? I think he goes he says something about like Saint Nicholas is a saint or something like that, and that just popped me.
oh my god. And then of course they keep going back to and then what's funny is because they keep going back to like this cracked door of
Mhm.
Santa inside it. And pretty much you see dead feet, like lifeless body laying there. And you're like, I'm sorry, we keep doing cutaways to a dead body of Santa, but eventually his feet started moving, his heart rate started
Yeah,
changing to jingle bells, and he was alive and
that
well.
was great.
I love that. The match with Cena and Del Rio, the Miracle on 34th Street
Mhm.
fight, those spots. So you mentioned that you were involved. So like pulling out the giant teddy bear. So
Yeah,
are you aware what's in those boxes ahead of time?
I
You
did,
did. Okay.
I did.
No
Because
one else
if
knew.
you go back and watch it. Right before Cena gets the bowling ball, he didn't know which box to get, and I'm tapping it with my foot, and I'm telling him I was like this one, because I knew which one had the goof gift. I knew which one had the goof gifts.
Yeah.
Um, because I put him there, or myself and the backstage guy, we put him there. So we had to make sure that we knew which one was what and where it was, because especially once we're throwing each other on stuff, like all the boxes are gonna move.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure that I knew which one it was what. So like if you go back and watch it, I'm tapping the one with the bowling ball on it
Wow.
with my foot.
Because again, when I interviewed Del Rio and I asked him, I was like, "Did you know it was in those boxes?" And he's like, "I had no idea." So like
Yeah,
pulling out a giant teddy bear
yeah,
and then
no.
whipping it at Cena, and then Cena's reaction of just like teddy bear, him looking at you as well in your face, you're like, I'm sorry, like I just thought this would work.
Oh, it was so much fun. That was a lot of fun. Looking back, that was a highlight. That was definitely a highlight.
Again, that's it's so when I reached out to you for an interview and you're like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." I'm like, first question: why did you try to kill Santa Claus? Like there wasn't even like, "Oh, let's talk about his history and this." I'm like, no,
No, no, no.
Santa
Santa
Claus,
Claus,
Santa Claus,
Santa Claus.
because I've been talking about that moment since it happened to everybody and their mother, and everyone's like, so they ran over Santa. I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like the
Christmas
fact,
Eve.
oh, Christmas Eve at 8 o'clock at night. Like you don't get it. Like if I was a little kid watching this, I like for instance, I remember there's a 1995 moment where Shawn Michaels pretended to have a concussion and he passed out in the ring. It was an angle, but I'm running into my parents' room screaming like Shawn Michaels is dead.
Now that I just remember something, also something that wasn't part of it that just so happened and it was great was when the Rio hit him with the car. He hits the car, he falls over, and then the tree falls on top of Santa.
Yes,
That wasn't part of it.
that's bad.
That
It's like
was so great.
it's like, oh, I got hit by a car. Oh, what's this? Oh,
The tree.
a tree hits you right in the face. Yes, I absolutely love that moment. So thank you for sharing the stories with me about that because
That was great.
it's one of the best. Like, and it's crazy because so many people have had matches. Like, you could have 100 great matches, and people will forget them because you had 100 great moments in
Yeah.
matches. But the moments, I
Moments.
think, are
Moments.
what sit in people's brains, and I think that's a problem with some fans where they're like, "Oh, I need a 35 minute, I need an hour Broadway," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's great and all, but how many can you have of those?" Running over Santa is a moment.
The thing that we were always told was we're here to create moments and we have to build for moments when it's not just the match itself. Yes, the matches are a big part of it.
Yeah.
For instance, WrestleMania with Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels. What is the one thing you remember?
I'm sorry, I love you.
Right. I don't remember anything about that match.
I was there live, and that's all.
Yeah.
There was a grown man next to me, like weeping, like hysterically weeping. I'm like, and I was a Shawn Michaels fan, so I'm like, I don't care. Ric Flair's retired, and he's like, good.
The match with Lesnar and Undertaker where he broke the streak. I don't remember the match, and I was there. I was in commentary. I just remember once the pin happened, those 5 minutes afterwards of silence.
Dude,
that's all I remember. I don't remember the match, and I was there. I was doing Spanish commentary.
Wow, don't bring up the streak, all right? You're gonna hurt my feelings again, just like how you hurt my feelings with Santa. The streak though, I remember that moment watching it home, and it didn't matter. Daniel Bryan beat Batista and Randy Orton for the championship, and then I know people were numb. Like you couldn't come back from that moment, unfortunately. Yeah. Though at one point though, you and Del Rio broke up on TV, and to me, it made no sense because it wasn't like you broke up for a big reason. You broke up because he had a rivalry with Rob Van Dam, who's kind of making a pit stop back in the WWE.
Even then yet, I had come back from a suspension. And then that night that I came back, that's when Triple H came up and basically said, I don't know whose idea it was. I was told it was Triple H. Whether or not it was or not, I don't know. But that's what I was told. Mm-hmm. Was that they were breaking us up. And I was that. We're not going to tell them no, so we just had to go with it. Shortly thereafter, they put me on this backstage Spanish stuff. Mm-hmm. I was down in NXT. I was already doing NXT as it was with the mask, like randomly. So I was more involved in NXT. They teamed me up with Kalisto down in NXT for his debut. We ran for a little while. Then I got hurt. I broke a rib, but I was still working. We had a match that I needed, and I love everybody in that match. So it wasn't anything with them. I was wrestling with a broken rib, and then the match, my part at least, was not good at all. I'll be the first to admit it. My part was horrible. They shot me up with so much like painkillers to try and pull through to the match, but it was what it was.
The
they're
the
actually
WWE shot you up with painkillers to get
no,
you through
no,
the
no.
match.
Yeah, right. No, no. It's called Toradol. It's just something to. It's kind of like a stronger Tylenol type thing.
Oh, okay.
Just to kind of like help me through the match, basically. Um,
But then why did they break you up though?
because
There
the
was
match, I don't know, what for X reason. I don't know with Del Rio.
yeah, you
I
and Del
feel
Rio.
yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Because again,
Um,
to me, the comparison in my brain is when Paul Bear turned on Undertaker, it was for a greater purpose. It's like it just felt so strange that out of nowhere there was no. To me, if you're gonna do something like that, build it, build it, build it, build it, build it, and have a
I
payoff.
was upset. I was upset for years until you accept. But I was upset for years because I know there was this is around the time of the changing of the guard between like when Triple H was getting more power.
Hmm.
So Triple H was taking over a lot of like John Laurinaitis jobs or tasks, excuse me. And then we were always Laurinaitis guys. So when it's
Oh,
kind of like when like the new president comes in, he gets rid of the old cabinet, brings in
yep,
his cabinet, kind of that kind of thing.
yep.
So I understand that part. Um, our whole thing was just very just eh.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. That you kind of suggested it, and I think it happens a lot of businesses, not just wrestling. In any job, a new manager comes in, they want their people, and so
Sure,
if
and I
it,
get that.
but like it also maybe they don't see money in heels. And I think it's weird that you did go from heel to babyface sometime. At one point you guys were baby faces. And to me, it was really weird. Yet we're heading into WrestleMania 29 with Jack Swagger's storyline. It was very xenophobic. And I attended WrestleMania 29, and that was the match I was most looking forward to. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
heading into it, Jack Swagger got in some trouble, and
Yeah,
and then that storyline just kind of like, for me as a
yeah,
viewer, fizzled a little bit because they couldn't go full force anymore because of what happened to him.
sure.
Is that what was described to you, that there is a situation outside of this company that we have to take care of before we take care of your needs and storyline?
I feel this is just from my understanding, from
Yeah.
my view, because obviously there were so many different things that were going on at the same time. So everybody has a different perspective.
Hmm.
I was very keen on this story for a lot of reasons because I am a Chicano, I'm Mexican. I was born in Los Angeles. I grew up around a lot of racial situations. My parents were immigrants. They're legal citizens now, but they came, to
Yeah.
the U.S. as immigrants. So I grew up around that a lot. And it wasn't until I went to the East Coast that I experienced racism a whole lot more,
Mm.
like blatant. And then during the time when a certain somebody, which was after duty, but years later when a certain president was on, that people just got very open
Hmm.
about their thoughts.
Yes.
So even now here in this area that I'm in, it's more so a very conservative, right wing Christian area. So I still hear it. So it's still out there, and I was very this storyline to me was very important because it's something that I've experienced.
Hmm.
And a lot of the promos that were going on, especially there was one in particular, I think it was a Miss TV, and then it was Zeb, basically it was Zeb and Alberto going back and forth. And that to me was very important because it was very important to this whole thing of the racism that goes on in America, and we can turn a blind eye to it, but it's always going to be there.
Hmm.
And I've experienced it firsthand. Um, before I gave out an idea for something, and unfortunately they didn't go with it because Swagger's whole thing was we the people. What I wanted to do was something like a video package where we had um, different people from different backgrounds, from different races or religions or sexual orientations, but they all had different professions. Like let's say a Mexican male who was a doctor, and then like an Indian woman who was a professor. Let's say a gay Asian man who was an astronaut. I don't know, just something. But
Yeah.
at the end of it, it would say, "We are the people." Something along those lines. That's something that I had thrown out there, and then it got nixed. I never knew why. They just didn't go with it. But that's something I wanted to do, where I wanted to get people from different creeds and different backgrounds, and then give them like professions, because we all can achieve that. Um, I was a kid from a barrio in LA that I came out of there, and as a great man Tupac once said, that rose and that grew out of concrete. And I got out there, and I was able to travel, and I became more than just a stereotype. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
No,
That was
I know. I really do appreciate you sharing because I think that was one of the biggest storylines in the past 10 years. And the fact that Jack Swagger got in trouble kind of put it on this weird back burner. But yet at the same time, I still remember it. I was there. Obviously, if you do your wrestling history, you'll know that there are storylines that are closer to reality and people
sure.
see. And that's the thing too with wrestling. Maybe this you have a perspective on this as well. Is sometimes people say, "Oh, wrestling, that's fake." Okay, all right. So I don't watch it because it's fake. All right. And then you do a storyline involving Alberto and yourself being discriminated against for being Mexican, being different color skin than Jack Swagger. And yet that's too real for some people. It's like, I'm sorry, is it too fake or is it too real? Like, which one is it? Because the show with dragons you're watching is fake as well. That's fake. When you get picked up and dropped on your back, you were dropped on your back for real. That person picked you up. There's no strings lifting you up and dropping you down. And I think that's, at least for me, that's always going to be an argument I have with everybody. And I'm not a wrestler. I interview wrestlers.
And the way I mean, and I know this has been going around a lot lately too, where like when people say like, oh yeah, well you'll go watch a car that turns into a robot, or this guy who got bit by a spider and then he can shoot webs out of his fingers. Oh, but there's this 6 foot turtle that knows kung fu and karate, but that's more real to you than what we're doing in front of you. In front of you, we're doing it live and in front of you. And also, if you can fake gravity, please let me know, because I'm still working on that one. Once I figure that out, I'll give you credit.
That'd be nice to defy gravity. That would be nice, though. So you mentioned a long time ago in this interview when we started that you started getting some chances to wrestle, and a show popped up, Saturday Morning Slam, and I did tune into it randomly. And the editing though was unfortunately atrocious because it was 10 in the morning, so they didn't want to show headshots. So I was watching it once, and you were El Loco. So that local, and so you or I guess a lucha libre, and you were in the ring, and you were fighting Curtis Axel. I remember this one completely.
No, that wasn't Curtis. I never wrestled Curtis. I did Justin Gabriel, and
maybe it was him.
And Sin Cara, I think twice.
Where I swear it was Curtis Axel. Maybe it makes some stories, but there was a moment where every time someone got punched in the face, you'd be like, "I'm going to punch you in the face." We cut the camera to the crowd, but if I punch you 10 times, it's literally you see this part and then cut this part and then cut this part and cut, and I'm like,
we tried because that was a big thing, like no headshots, and I get it, kid show, okay. And I want to say either Sheamus was a champ or had just lost the title, but he was main event. And then he did a I don't know who it was with, but he had a match on Saturday Morning Slam, and obviously his finisher was a bro kick, and he does like the Polish hammer, the double axe to the head, and sure enough, he did him, and that was a finish. The boot to the face. So I remember we were all in the back watching. We're like, well. All right, well, there goes that rule.
Let's move on though, because it seemed like one night you were involved with AEW. You did Spanish commentary for them, because of a mishap with someone else who used to do commentary. Said a few things that nobody knew what he was saying until someone translated it and realized, oh, that's not a good thing to say to somebody. Yeah, you were brought in for one night. Why was it one night? Was there potential to continue working there, or that wasn't going to be in the cards?
No, they were doing a tryout. They were doing tryouts. I was brought in by Thunder Rosa. I'm very close with her. She was training under me for a good while before she became Thunder Rosa. So she vouched for me to go over there, and at the same time, Alex Abramontes had brought in his guy Alvaro Rojas. So basically, it was between us two, and I have no, I love Alberto. So I'm happy he got the spot. Like, he's a good dude. So I was there for 2 days, 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, 2 days, with AW, and I was actually on my way back to Egypt. So I had canceled my original flight back to Egypt to go do the AW deal. And then when that ended, I was scheduled to go back to Egypt, but then there was this is when like Omicron was happening, so
Mm.
everything got canceled, and I ended up not going back to Egypt. And now here I am in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
The pandemic does lovely things for all of us, doesn't it?
It messes up so many plans.
It messes up a lot of things. I've talked to so many people, and they all have a story about how the pandemic ruined whatever they had in line or what was going to happen next for them. So, but
Definitely, yeah, it's unfortunate.
there's a rumor online. I don't think it's true at all because of your last names not being the same in real life. Raquel Rodriguez, Ricardo Rodriguez.
We're both RR.
So obviously people are like, oh, well, they have the last name, so they must be related. So every person with the last name Smith in America are also related according to this. Related. So obviously you're not related, but I think the idea of having you come back to the WWE as being her special ring announcer, because you have the same names, it's easy to just put it on TV as that.
I would love to. I would definitely love to. I would definitely go back to WWE if given the opportunity. I mean, my Twitter is still at RWE, so I mean, I don't have to change that.
I have a theory why though it's still that. I have a theory.
But I will definitely love to. I would definitely love to. And actually, what's funny is that myself, Alberto, and Callisto were all Rodriguez's.
Wow.
So, yeah, and that's just coincidental.
It's just so the Raquel Rodriguez thing. Have people tweeted that to you?
Yeah. When it first happened, when she first came out, and I'm happy. I don't think I've met her. But when I know she's from Texas, she's from Rudy Boy Gonzalez's Texas Wrestling Academy in San Antonio. So I've never met her that I'm aware of. But either way, point is, I'm happy for her to have another Mexicana on TV. To me, is awesome. So power in numbers.
It's good. I just thought it was so.
I would definitely love to go back.
I think we'd love to have you back. I think it's so funny though when you go on Twitter and I'm like, I saw one person tweet. I'm like, that's not true. Wait, hold on, is it true?
No, when it happened, I think I called her my cousin.
Yeah, I was gonna say like there's no. I was like someone said like I think someone said like uncle. I was like that doesn't make sense. The age is like
I think we're very similar ish.
Has there Impact Wrestling ever reached out to you?
They did once. I had a very severe drinking problem for a good while after WWE. And I basically no showed. I was not in a good mental state because of my addiction. Eventually I went in, I got treated. I had kind of how I landed here in Lancaster. I came to a rehab center, I exited, decided to stay here. But if it wasn't for the rehab center, I don't know where I would have been. Wow. But yeah, they to go back to the question, yes, they did once when Alberto was there, and I blew it. I completely blew it up. So that was on me.
Now, obviously, certain issues with athletes happen, and obviously, what do you contribute that problem to? Was it you're no longer in the WWE and you're just upset, or it got out of hand?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I've been very open about all this stuff like on social media, so it's not like it's like sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
When I left WWE, I was very bitter. I was never fired. I quit. One day I just called the office. I was like, hey, you know what, guys, I'm not coming in. I'm done. And I was already bitter. I hated everything. I hated life. I hated wrestling. So for me to say that I hated wrestling was a big thing. One day I just woke up and I was like, I'm not going. I called the office and I was like, I'm done. Prior to this, just until recently, it got better, but I had horrible insomnia. I would go, I think the longest was like 8 days without sleep. And then that's kind of how the drinking sort of started because I needed to drink in order to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, the glass of wine wasn't enough, so it was 2 glasses, and then 2 glasses turned into a bottle. The bottle of wine wasn't enough, so I turned into liquor, and it just became a thing. Um, the concussions didn't help either that I got through wrestling. And the alcohol is a depressant, so it didn't help the whole situation either.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, it just became a dependency where I had the money, I had the time, and I was like, I'm just gonna go blow it all up on booze. And then I went on this bender for a couple of years. I tried getting sober when COVID happened because it got really bad. I lasted about a year and a half clean, basically on my own. And then I relapsed a year ago. Yeah, almost a year ago now. And I went on another bender for like 6, 7 months, and then more. And then that's how I ended up over here.
Now,
it was a mixture of a whole lot of different things.
of course, usually we hear stories about wrestlers who used to work for the WWE. Their treatment is usually paid for. Did you do this all out of your own pocket?
No. I was very, very thankful that WWE was a big help with all of this. I woke up in detox one day, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was in San Antonio. I woke up in detox. I don't remember how I got there, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I started reaching out to a bunch of former friends from WWE, or excuse me, former coworkers from WWE, still friends. And eventually they got me in touch with the wellness department.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I still haven't met this man, but I talk to him weekly, Bob Keller. And I'm very thankful for him because he got me connected with Blueprints Recovery here in Lancaster. And then he got me in contact with Chris Dreisbach, who's the owner of Blueprints. And they've been very supportive throughout this whole thing. They helped me out so much. But yeah, WWE was a very big part of this whole situation.
Well, it's good to hear because again, everyone likes to paint them as the monster, and
No, they have, yeah, they're great.
it's good to hear. That is good to hear because again, nobody knows what tomorrow will hold for us, and obviously you're stronger, and here you are now,
Yeah,
doing your thing, and I am very excited to talk to you today about how you tried to kill Santa Claus.
So that's always gonna be a highlight for me.
Yeah, highlight for me too, buddy. Highlight for me too. Okay, you hurt my feelings. You hurt me deep.